Hey guys, Sam here from Chalice and Chains, and today I wanted to do a video kind of exploring the idea of whether you are actually playing your fantasy or alien races, role-playing your fantasy or alien races as really anything more than human. And what's prompted this was that I realized that when I'm playing a fantasy game, particularly Dungeons and Dragons, I tend to like to play elf or half-elf type characters. For some reason, that's just what I'm drawn to. I like that kind of class, just with the lore and everything behind it. But what I realized is that I don't know that I do a good job of portraying the mystery and the sort of allure, and maybe even the aloofness of a race like the elf. I know typically when you see people portray dwarves, they tend to do it with a bad Scottish accent, you know, the jovial, hard drinking, maybe kind of stupid, you know, you see that kind of thing. Or with half-orc especially, you'll see this brusque kind of foolish, you know, maybe speak in one-syllable words. You know, they play these kind of stereotypes. And that might be okay. You know, those might be how they're portrayed in fiction. But I noticed with elves in particular, at least when I play them, I tend to end up playing them like a human. You know, or at least, you know, I kind of myself. I don't necessarily do a good job of bringing across how magical and mysterious and kind of special an elf is. And I was thinking about this too in, you know, games like Star Wars, for example, where you might be portraying a alien race. You know, let's say that you're portraying a, I don't know, a Quarren, right? How would that be different than if you were, you know, just playing a human, or you were playing a Wookiee, or you were playing a Duro, you know, whatever, like, how do you bring across that sense of strangeness and different from being a human? You know, so this is something that I struggle with, and I'm wondering if anyone else does as well, because looking back on some of my games, I really want to, as a player and as a GM, be able to really kind of portray the strangeness and the alienness of these different races, right? Whether that is an elf in a fantasy game or some sort of strange and alien creature in a sci-fi game. So what tips do you guys have, especially maybe for well-known races like the elf, for example, that has lots of lore and lots of history behind it and lots of examples in fiction of how elves are portrayed? What do you guys do in those regards, or what would you suggest to do to really bring across how they're different from humans, you know? And maybe also let's expand that into something like a halfling, right? Because a halfling, at least in most fantasy races, is very much like portrayed like a human culture, right? They have a very similar culture to those of humans, but in many cases in fantasy, halflings are portrayed either as sort of these tricky thief type characters. Sometimes gnomes are portrayed that way as well. Sometimes they're portrayed as kind of bumbling simpletons, and sometimes they're portrayed as more of a sort of pastoral, gentrified kind of people, you know, much more pacifistic in their beliefs. And so, but, you know, and obviously they're short. And so how do you bring across that? Is that something where maybe that's the type of race that you really can play it just like a human, you know? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you guys think? What are some of your tips and tricks for how to bring about that type of portrayal of those races, characters, whatever, into your role-playing games? So let me know, you know, leave a comment on the video here. I'll post this up in some of the various Facebook groups and Google Plus groups and all that. I'd love to have a response. So, you know, and go ahead, give the video a like or a dislike if you don't like it. Subscribe if you haven't, and hopefully I will hear from you soon. Happy gaming.